Hi and welcome to Pearl Magazine. It's been 25 years since Hong Kong's sovereignty was handed over to China. This week, we begin a four-part series looking back at the ups and downs endured by Hong Kong people, including numerous political, social, and livelihood challenges. Ahead of the 25th anniversary of the handover, we ask, have the principles of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy been implemented and upheld?
He was all in one airline.
中华人民共和国香港特别行政区正式成立。
On July 1st, 1997, Hong Kong reverted to Chinese sovereignty.
本人董建华经此宣誓。
The first chief executive, Tung Chee-hwa, and principal officials were sworn into office. Rita Fan, president of the Provisional Legislative Council, supervised the oaths of legislators.
经此宣誓。
According to the original design, after the election and two-year term of the last Legislative Council of Hong Kong, it would transition to become the first Legislative Council of the HKSAR. But after Chris Patten came to Hong Kong, he said he didn't know what the UK had promised and proposed his own electoral reform. The Chinese side called this triple violations and decided to act unilaterally to set up the Provincial Legislative Council. Patten would not allow us to set up an office for the Provincial Legislative Council in Hong Kong. In the end, we rented an office and called it the Rita Fan office. There were about a dozen Democratic Party members who refused to run for the Provisional Legislative Council. They would become the largest party in the first LegCo. Everyone expected that.
Soon, trouble was brewing between one country and two systems. In the Ng case in 1999, the Court of Final Appeal ruled that mainland-born children of Hong Kong permanent residents enjoyed the right of abode and could reside in Hong Kong regardless of whether they were born in or out of wedlock. It also held that Hong Kong courts had jurisdiction over the consistency of legislation or acts of the National People's Congress or the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress with the Basic Law.
So-called non-intervention doesn't mean the central government will sit by and do nothing. From the central government's point of view, the ruling of the CFA challenged the sovereignty of the state and did not respect its authority. This sparked a major political crisis in which the four mainland members of the Basic Law Drafting Committee attacked the CFA.
An interpretation later delivered from Beijing said children have the right of abode only if one of their parents has lived in Hong Kong for 7 years at the time of birth.
Interpretations by the NPCSC are part of Hong Kong's legal system. The authority of the final interpretation of the Basic Law lies with the Standing Committee. However, under the Basic Law, courts of the SAR may interpret certain articles related to the high degree of autonomy of Hong Kong. The Standing Committee can still make the final interpretation.
After the handover, Hong Kong faced many troubles, including a prolonged economic downturn. Amid the SARS epidemic and a failed government bid to legislate Article 23 of the Basic Law, 500,000 people hit the streets to protest on July 1st.
According to the procedures, the second reading of the bill should be tabled on July 9th. Mr. Tung Chee-hwa convened a meeting of the Executive Council to discuss this matter. I got the message that EXCO would unanimously agree to go ahead.
都係覺得我辭職啊，係冇選擇之中嘅唯一一個比較好啲嘅選擇啦。
If the entire Liberal Party abstained, there wouldn't be enough votes to pass it. So Mr. Tung called me and said they would shelve the second reading. I wasn't particularly disappointed since they had made so many amendments to it that Article 23 had become a toothless tiger.
The massive protests triggered by the legislation on Article 23 were a turning point for the central government to abandon the non-intervention policy and actively respond to the situation in Hong Kong. At this proactive stage, the central government hoped to improve Hong Kong's political situation through economic and livelihood measures. While they were successful to some extent, these measures also created a string of political and social problems. Many mainlanders came to Hong Kong and bought flats, and mainland enterprises sought listings on the stock market. Lots of people felt they didn't benefit and even thought these developments affected their lives.
In 2004, another interpretation of the Basic Law was made over the selection of the CE and for the formation of the Legislative Council and its voting procedures. Political reform now had to follow a 5-step process.
1個小時以前，我正式向中央政府提交咗請求辭去行政長官職務嘅報告。
In 2005, Tung Chee-hwa quit halfway through his term, sparking controversy over the term of office of the next CE. Acting Chief Executive Donald Tsang then asked the NPCSC for yet another interpretation. The term of the new CE would only be 2 years. It was the third interpretation since the handover.
本人曾荫权谨此宣誓。
Soon after Tsang took office, he took all Legislative Council members, including Pan-Democrats, on a trip to Guangdong. Afterward, the SAR government published the 5th report of the task force on constitutional development, proposing new electoral reforms to the Legislative Council. It suggested allowing district councillors to vote for the CE in 2007 and elect 5 new Legislative Council seats in 2008. Pan-Democrats opposed it, demanding a timetable for universal suffrage.
If there's universal suffrage in the political system, and it can help restore Hong Kong's status as an international financial center, why would we oppose it? I'd certainly be in favor. But if universal suffrage is just a slogan and it only ends up in paralyzing LegCo so that the government cannot pay civil servants, then what do we need universal suffrage for?
Both political reform motions submitted by Tsang were rejected in LegCo. Hong Kong's constitutional development was stuck. In 2007, to fight the small circle election, the Pan-Democrats tried to obtain enough votes to nominate their CE candidate. On the 10th anniversary of the handover, President Hu Jintao visited Hong Kong. He talked up the importance of one country, two systems.
一国是两制的前提，没有一国就没有两制。
The same year, Tsang announced he had submitted the report on public consultation green paper on constitutional development to Beijing. The Pan-Democrats were opposed and organized a mass rally to achieve universal suffrage. In 2010, Zheng pushed for constitutional reforms again. The League of Social Democrats and the Civic Party hoped to trigger a referendum in the form of by-elections by resigning their seats collectively in 5 constituencies. The Democratic Party proposed an improved electoral method for district council functional constituency seats, so the 5 new ones in 2012 would be elected by the public through 1 person, 2 votes. The reform package passed in LegCo with 80% of the votes.
Actually, central government officials and some patriots had great reservations about this kind of proposal because it would in effect allow the opposition further boost their strength in LegCo. If they continued to be recalcitrant, governance would be even more difficult.
Shortly after he was elected, CY Leung was faced with numerous filibuster campaigns in LegCo. Afterwards, filibusters and curtailing the debate were common in LegCo. The British Hong Kong flag became a common prop at protests and demonstrations.
港独在香港是没有市场的，这些都是分裂国家对中国主权极大的伤害。
The central government concluded Hong Kongers had a distorted grasp of one country, 2 systems. Hong Kong people had an increasingly confrontational stance towards the central authorities. This was extremely detrimental to national security.
Beijing had hoped that one country, 2 systems would enjoy trouble-free implementation. Instead, officials realized constitutional reform was far from the final stretch.
More on Hong Kong's political development over the past 25 years when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Pearl Magazine. Hong Kong's political path has seen plenty of twists and turns and missed opportunities. Eventually, authorities in Beijing decided to tighten their grip. Beijing's road forward is meant to lessen political turmoil through national security.
Over the past 10 years, Hong Kong has been rocked by political turmoil. It began in 2012 with protests against national education. Moral and national education was originally meant to be implemented in all primary schools in Hong Kong in September, but it was met with fierce public opposition. The government withdrew the course guidelines, leaving implementation up to sponsoring bodies and schools.
National education was not introduced in the previous 15 years. When it was going to be introduced in the following 5 years, it met with opposition. That's why Hong Kongers have no concept of the nation. The SAR government didn't understand its importance. By the time it understood it, it was powerless to do it, and social chaos was the result.
For a long time, Hong Kong has totally neglected national education and education about decolonization, national security, and Chinese history. Young people have distorted ideas about the country, the basic law, and the mainland. At the same time, they feel a sense of crisis and unease, feeling that they must come out to save Hong Kong.
In 2013, a government consultation document was published. A task force was set up to consult on forming the Legislative Council in 2016 and for the selection of the chief executive by universal suffrage in 2017. A group of pan-Democrats and academics insisted on using civic nomination to elect the CE by universal suffrage. One option would qualify a candidate to run after obtaining a threshold of nominations. It was seen as a way to bypass the Basic Law and the NPCSC decision.
45条第2款把这个提名权只授予了提名委员会。
In June 2014, the Information Office of the State Council issued a white paper on One Country, Two Systems. It stated the central authorities exercised overall jurisdiction over Hong Kong and the high degree of autonomy was authorized by the central authorities, stressing it was not the same as full autonomy.
I don't think their policy changed. They just thought there was a need to explain to Hong Kongers that they had overall jurisdiction and that they authorized the SAR to exercise a high degree of autonomy with executive, legislative, and independent judicial power.
On August 31st, the NPCSC passed a decision on the selection of the CE by universal suffrage. 4 core frameworks were established, including forming a nominating committee of 1,200 members from 4 sectors. The 23 pan-democratic legislators declared they would not pocket the reform first.
这一次，香港错失的将不仅仅是一次民主发展的机会。 更重要的是，香港可能面临更长时间的政治争拗。
喺度宣布，佔領中環正式啟動。
From 2014 onwards, I feel that the central government is no longer just responding to what's happening in Hong Kong, but is taking the initiative. Their fundamental principle is that the anti-Chinese forces stirring up trouble in Hong Kong, as well as the foreign forces that they collude with, must be vigorously suppressed. However, they can allow room for more moderate pan-democrats to exist. That's why they have to make sure that Hong Kong's political power is firmly grasped by patriots.
After the 79-day Occupy movement was over, the political reform trio continued to lobby legislators. Just before the political reform proposal was put to a vote, a group of pro-establishment legislators walked out, hoping to buy time to wait for Lau Wong-Fat, who is indisposed.
出席嘅議員37人，8人贊成，28人反對。我宣布議案被否決。
After the Occupy movement, many more young people went into politics. Several localists were elected to LegCo, but some controversial oaths triggered the 5th interpretation of the Basic Law by the NPCSC, resulting in the disqualification of 6 pan-democratic legislators.
According to the Basic Law, you are required to take the oath. But some people view it with contempt and try to take it in all sorts of weird ways. Since the oath-taking is invalid, they're no longer qualified for office.
抛弃了基本法，香港避难无疑。说什么自觉呀，什么港独啊，那些东西啊，根本成不了事。
By 2019, Hong Kong was more divided than ever. The anti-extradition crisis was an unprecedented political storm.
呢條條例嘅草案已經壽終正寢。The bill is dead.
The riots in 2019 were a turning point in the development of One Country, Two Systems. It completely changed the central government's previous, more passive, or at least not very proactive policy. From now on, Hong Kong's development would be largely dominated and steered by Beijing, so that the state policy of one country, two systems can continue.
On June 30th, 2020, the Hong Kong National Security Law was officially promulgated.
At the time of the handover, we oversimplified the matter. Let's change the flag, let's change the national emblem, then it's done. That's certainly not true. You are the nationals of this country. You have the responsibilities and rights as nationals. After the riots of 2019, you can't go on like this. You have to change.
After the implementation of the Hong Kong National Security Law, the idea over the past 20 years or so that the central government was weak and could be easily bullied and made to give in by coercion or by continuously escalating the force of coercion has been completely shattered. With the National Security Law in force, the chance of the continuation of one country, two systems beyond 2047 has greatly increased.
Last year, the central government made more changes to Hong Kong's political system. The election committee responsible for electing the CE was further expanded to 1,500 members across 5 sectors. Electorates changed from individuals to bodies, and the 117 seats originally held by the district councillors were eliminated. While the Legislative Council seats increased from 70 to 90, the number of seats returned by geographical constituencies through direct elections was cut to 20. A candidate eligibility review committee was also established.
All those who participate in Hong Kong affairs, who could influence the path that Hong Kong would take, must love the country and love Hong Kong. What's so unreasonable about that? I think it's quite reasonable.
On May 8th, the only candidate for CE, John Lee, was elected with 1,416 votes. The first half of No Change for 50 Years is finished. Over the next 25 years, Hong Kong governance faces a very different road under one country, two systems, Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy.
Hong Kong's political path has taken many twists and turns, but if the overall jurisdiction by the central authorities is exercised correctly and effectively, our future political path will be much smoother. The chance of universal suffrage has become much greater.
We should treasure and safeguard all the opportunities we have now and not let someone destroy them. We have to learn one thing, not to listen to too many rumors and repeat what others say. We should be more practical, be pragmatic, look ahead, and look upwards.
That's Pearl Magazine for this week. Join us again, same time next time. Bye for now.